one hand, it's really about celebrating London as a global hub for architecture. When talking about architecture, it's not just capital A architecture, but it's really about all of those everyday spaces as much as it's about grand designs. And on the other hand, it's really trying to open up discussions to a much broader audience. So really kind of encouraging everyone and anyone across the city to take part, both as audience, but also as an event organizer.
Hello, welcome to Talking Place, the podcast bringing placemakers and storytellers together to talk about place. I'm your host, Tanisha Raffiuddin. I am the founder of Concept Culture, a creative agency in London, passionate about creating purposeful brands and telling powerful stories. In this episode, it is my absolute pleasure to talk place with Rosa Rogina. Rosa is an architect, researcher, and curator. Rosa is currently the director of the London Festival of Architecture, where she leads the development and curation of the festival's annual program. Rosa also runs a Master's in Architecture Design Studio at the University of East London. We cover a lot of ground in this episode around the impact of the London Festival of Architecture on the city and its places over the past 20 years, and what's in store for us this year in the 2025 edition of the festival, whose theme is Voices. So please do stick around till the end. All right, let's talk place. Rosa, welcome to Talking Place, the podcast bringing placemakers and storytellers together to talk about place.
Hello, thank you so much for having me today.
It's my absolute pleasure, Rosa. So before we get into it, I would love for our listeners to get to know you a little bit more. So please share your journey so far up to the point where you are now the director of London Festival of Architecture.
Yes, absolutely. Very happy to do so. So my name is Rosa Rogina. I'm originally from Croatia, where I started my journey as an architect. So trained initially there, worked abroad a little bit, kind of combination of the Netherlands and the UK. And finally came to London for my master degree and never really left, which was an absolute pleasure. And I think kind of building up my career and opportunities, particularly in the context of the city we are at the moment. Very soon on the journey, I realized that architecture is way beyond brick and mortar, and that actually I'm very interested of using architectural skills, but in a much broader sense, which consequentially led me to the London Festival of Architecture, which, as you said, today I direct.
That is amazing. And of course, it's so inspiring because we are actually in the London Centre. So it's really fitting to be here and have this conversation with you. So a question I ask everyone on this podcast, because everyone has an interesting take on it. What makes a place for you? How would you define place, and what does good look like?
That's a very difficult but also exciting question. I think for me, the main difference is that social layer and social aspect, so kind of personal reflections, perspectives, and feeling safe and kind of invited into a place. So for me, it's something that is, again, very personal. So what I consider a good place, maybe you wouldn't necessarily agree, but I think in general, as somebody who is working in kind of public realm, more specifically, it's really about creating spaces that are kind of safe, inclusive, accessible, and relevant to all. I'm really interested in those dichotomies in between a kind of special and ordinary, personal and shared, about kind of order and disorder, about creating a system, but also enabling lots of different things to emerge. So it's kind of, for me, it's a space that has kind of very personal connotations to the people who consider it as a good place, but also is continuously adaptable and able to evolve.
I love that. And I think that's really interesting of the point you touched upon about, there can be designed and formal spaces, but there's a lot of success in the organic places and the places that evolve and adapt over time. But to your point, I think it is very important that those places are safe and inclusive and accessible and very much in the 21st century, they have to be relevant as well. People, should want to go there, and they should be attractive, and people should want to be there. So thank you for sharing that. So Rosa, what is your favorite place in the world and why?
It's really hard to narrow it to one specific place, but having thought about this, I would probably pick Island of Rab in Croatia, which might not mean a lot to most of the listeners, but I think, again, going back to that personal perspective and social layers added onto a place, that's a place which I feel the most kind of safe in. It's an escape place. It's a place where I spent years spending my summer time with my mom, with my cousin, and then later on with my husband, and now even with my little one. And it's a very interesting place from kind of architectural perspective as well. It's a relatively small island on the Adriatic coast on the northern side of the kind of Adriatic archipelago. It has all sorts of layers of the history. So it was founded by Illyrians, but then it had moments in history when it was Roman, Venetian. For a short period, it was under Napoleon and Austro-Hungarian Empire later on. So it has all of these layers, which in a way, structured or unstructured, created a really, really special place. Obviously, people mostly go there for summertime, but I'm even more interested in that place in kind of out of season times. Obviously, sea and vitamin C helps with my selection of place, but I don't think it's about particularly well-designed space or anything like that. It's just where I feel most comfortable with my closest ones.
Yes, and vitamin C is very, very important. So it has a very special place in your heart, and there's so many memories that now you're sharing as a family. Like you said, with your mother, and now with your children. So, coming back to what makes a good place and the memories that we share as human beings around places, let's now talk about the London Festival of Architecture. So, for those out there who are listening who may not know what the festival is about, please share what the festival is about and what makes it so special.
So London Festival of Architecture is run by New London Architecture, and it's a month-long annual celebration of architecture and city making taking place across London. And its ambition and objectives are twofold. On one hand, it's really about celebrating London as a global hub for architecture. When talking about architecture, it's not just capital A architecture, but it's really about all of those everyday spaces as much as it's about grand designs. And on the other hand, it's really trying to open up discussions to a much broader audiences. So really kind of encouraging everyone and anyone across the city to take part, both as audience, but also as an event organizer.
That's amazing. And I have very fond memories of LFA, as well as the first time I moved to London and hearing about it. And, it was one of the highlights of the calendar, especially as a fresh graduate architect, and it was my way of connecting with the industry and learning about what was going on and what was happening, and we could volunteer, and it was just so much fun. But that's obviously 15 years ago, and as I know, it's now 20 years of the LFA. Wow, that's quite a long time, and that's testament to the success of the festival, that it's been going on for 20 years. And I listened to the NLA's podcast, Building Sounds, and there was an episode with Peter Murray and Moira Lascelles, and they were talking about how the festival came about 20 years ago, and it was meant to be a festival not just for the industry, but for Londoners as well. And it was meant to be something that wasn't quite like something like the Venice Biennale, for example, which mostly is for, the elite in the sector, but doesn't necessarily have an impact on the everyday Venice resident. So how So in that context, what kind of role does LFA play in shaping the City of London or the wider City of London?
I think it's lots about joining the dots in a way and bringing different kind of groups of people. Obviously, the industry is a big one, but it's also about everybody else who takes part in shaping our urban environment, and that really goes down to visitors, residents, commuters, etc. And I think it's great that you have mentioned Peter Murray, and obviously superhero within the industry, but also kind of setting up the festival back in the days in Clerkenwell as an architectural biennale. And I think if you can look back, it really encapsulates the essence of what the festival in a different way, but is still trying to do today. And that's really kind of bringing out the kind of cultural activity to kind of streets and everyday spaces and kind of bringing all of those people together. So one of the first events was closing off St. John's Street and turfing it with grass, and then using the event to also hoard cattle towards the Smithfield Market, and really kind of trying to showcase some old legislation and future possibilities in a kind of creative way. Obviously, Clerkenwell back then, and I would say even today, was an area, and is an area with highest concentration of architects in the world. But it was very intentional that that conversation was staged on the street itself rather than necessarily just in the studios, which I think encapsulates very well the mission and ambition of the festival. Obviously, we are now annual, we are citywide, going as kind of north as Barnet, as south as Bromley, and equally on east-west direction as well. So it's really about kind of building that local relevance of the festival in each area, and each area will be obviously very specific, but it's about discovering the festival activity on your doorstep wherever you are in the city.
Yeah, that's amazing, and I know that the program has evolved over time. I've seen it as I've lived in London for the past 15 years. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. But before we get on to this year's theme and what's going to be special, I wanted to ask you if you had a favorite theme so far.
Yeah, I mean, again, a difficult question. Each year we have a theme, and it's always intentionally a single word, which increasingly with kind of more and more editions is becoming challenging to pick, but equally because the times are changing, the theme is always evolving with what's happening across the industry and in the world as well. But perhaps if I kind of have to narrow to a single one, it's probably 2022, which was ACT. And in a way, 2022 was probably the first proper festival post-pandemic. Already in 21, we were transitioning to in-person, outdoor, etc. But I think that move, we had care in 2021, and then transforming the ideas of how can we care for ourselves, each other, the city and the environment, into a more kind of proactive call to action around let's now actually act and mobilize, and how we can use the festival as a vehicle to be more proactive in terms of changing the city and ourselves.
I think I'm going to have to agree with you on that one, because I also, like you, remember care very carefully, because it was during the pandemic and we were all online, and at the time I was on the Committee of Women in Architecture, and we had created an event around asking people to share what care means to them, and particularly as women in architecture, as a marginalized group, how can we care for each other? It's a tough profession for many reasons I won't go into now. So I do remember care very fondly, and I remember ACT as well, because we are now at this tipping point where architects are increasingly entering into activism, be it as social campaigners, climate change campaigners. So that was a really good turning point, if you were, and a good signal for the LFA to put this theme out, that we are now moving into activism mode, and it's not just talking the talk. We're going to walk the walk and actually do some of the stuff that we've been constantly just talking about, and actually enable the social change. So thank you for sharing. That ACT was very powerful. Yeah, I'm going to agree with you on that one too. So Rosa, tell us about the 2025 LFA theme.
I'm very excited about our 25 theme, which is voices. Really looking into the ideas of how creating urban environment is not just about building, but it's also about listening and amplifying and really encountering all different voices and perspectives, particularly thinking about the ones that still remain underrepresented or left out of the conversations. So really teasing out people to think about how do we work beyond boundaries, who is our neighbor, how can we hear them, how we can share stories, share experience. And we're very interested to see which type of activity comes back, because I'm suspecting lots of it will be performative and it will be slightly challenging the idea of what an architectural event is or should be.
That's amazing. And I was quite intrigued by the theme as well, because I always firmly believe that buildings speak to us, places speak to us, and if you were to listen, imagine the stories that would tell. So I'm really excited to see the events and that come out and how people approach this theme and how exciting it's going to be. And like you said, yeah, it could be performative. It'd be nice to see a more performative a response to LFA. So yeah, very exciting. So are there any special events coming up, given that it's 20 years? What should festival goers this year look out for?
Well, I would suggest that everybody really has a look over our website and carefully follows announcements that are yet to be made in the upcoming weeks and months. We already know we will be working in different areas across London to stage a more concentrated hum of activities. So we will be working in City of London, Fitzrovia, Barnet. We will be going to Hounslow or on the Great West Road to celebrate the centenary there. We will be in Sutton, Haringey, Wood Green, Alexander Palace, and a few more places to be announced very soon. So hopefully plenty across London to explore throughout June.
Is there anything you can share that people should particularly be looking out for?
I'm very excited about things that I can speak about.
Yes.
I'm very excited. We will be having a trail of seats and benches in Fitzrovia designed by emerging architects. So we have selected 9 fantastic designs that will be on display throughout different spaces in Fitzrovia, offering more places to kind of sit and enjoy kind of your time while in the area. And then equally, in the City of London, we have just launched a competition for City Views, which is looking into a wayfinding scheme that would connect 4 viewing platforms that are publicly accessible across Eastern cluster, and we'll do a bit of kind of wayfinding both horizontally and vertically, which I'm very excited about as well, because it's really kind of going down to our core idea of kind of public and open space as something for and by all Londoners.
That's excellent. And will these be permanent? Will they stay on after the festival?
So the benches are temporary and they will stay for the duration of the summer, after which we will work with Fitzrovia Partnership to find a more permanent location for each of the designs. And then for the City Views project, it will stay in situ for about 2 years. So it's a slightly longer piece of work.
Excellent. And I think that brings me on nicely to my next question, was about the legacy and the impact of such citywide festivals on places and placemaking, but not just in London, but anywhere in the world in these similar festivals. What can the lasting impact be on a place?
I think there is huge potential there, and I think there is something which I really love about festivals is the fact that we're perceived as we come and then we go, but sometimes we don't actually go. I mean, you can kind of go back and look into pieces such as London Eye, which was supposed to be a temporary wheel, and then today it's still there. But equally, if you kind of draw parallels with the festival, some of the really relevant early work was particularly on Exhibition Road, for example, where in 2008, festival worked with Kensington and Chelsea to trial pedestrianization, and that led to transformation of the road into shared surface, what is today there. So I think there's lots of potential in these kind of projects where you use the festival to demonstrate the future potential, to test some of ideas, and some might be direct success, some might be failure, but I think it's really kind of testing and trialing that will really get you to eventually be able to then implement it in a plan, or even just kind of transform it as it is in a kind of future evolution of the place.
That's amazing, and I never really appreciated that the festival was also a vehicle of testing and prototyping, and what could the future look like, and questioning what could the future look like, and then a successful prototype could then be applied into a wider master plan or a wider vision. So really, as a Londoner, I'm really proud that the city has a festival like this. So what about let's say that there's someone out there in another city and wants to host something similar. What would your advice be to them?
I mean, we are always open for conversation, and we are very open for sharing our ideas and models to be implemented somewhere else. Of course, each city is very specific, and it might need a slightly different approach. So London is very big. It's not as dense, and it's kind of big in footprint. So a kind of a month-long event makes sense. In some of the other cities, you would probably go for something slightly shorter in time, or you might wish to move it across the city. So I think there are lots of different models that you could run an architectural festival, but I think some of the principles could definitely be extracted from London and implemented somewhere else. And we are always kind of open for those city conversations to kind of learn as much as to share how we do it, because obviously there's no one right way to do so.
Excellent. And so obviously this is now the 20th year, so there's definitely something that's clicked and it has worked. In your own words, what do you think is behind the success of the LFA?
I think, from the early days, it was really a goodwill of people kind of coming together and making the festival work. So originally it was co-run by 4 different organizations, which NLA was one of them, alongside RABA, British Council, and Architectural Foundation. And then it really kind of, from that model, it emerged that after some time, the festival came under NLA brand, but it was always very much in that kind of collaborative way of delivering the festival. So working with a number of museums, galleries, institutions, series of kind of architectural practices and other built environment organizations, down to community groups across London. And in my dream, which would be very interesting to test it, it's almost like, what if we stepped back as a team? Would it still be happening? And something what was really empowering to see in the last few years is that we set up our mentors program, where different past event organizers are sharing their experiences and upskilling new event organizers. So it's almost this self-sustaining network of people who have opportunities across the year to come together and share experiences. And we are here as a facilitator, as an umbrella festival to kind of wrap it all up, but it would never happen without 250 plus individuals and organizations that deliver content throughout the festival.
Wow, so 250 people, that's the formal number, plus how many ever organizations apply to submit, plus the local communities. So yeah, it really is, it's quite a massive undertaking. And like you said, I guess collaboration and the goodwill, like everyone being aligned. I guess that's what I'm hearing from what you've just said. I think that's probably, yeah. So it's a lot of goodwill, a lot of being on the same journey.
And energy.
And energy,
willingness to celebrate anything from a very tall skyscraper down to your local garden or a street, or closing a street and having a kind of a long table for a big meal of residents, down to kind of more, let's say, industry-led conversations, build projects. So I think the breadth and the range of ways to get involved hopefully empowers the broadest possible audience and organizers to do so.
Absolutely. And speaking about broad voices and diverse voices, coming back to the theme. So obviously you are the director of a festival of architecture, but you've probably learned a lot along the way in terms of what makes a good place. And so in your view, how important is it to bring these diverse voices to the table to enable good places?
Incredibly. And I think we cannot design in other way than kind of listening and factoring different perspectives. And it's about, I guess the biggest challenge is how do you celebrate disagreement and how do you allow disagreement to kind of emerge in something that then, multiple opinions are manifested in a place, rather than trying to come to a consensus and then getting something that everybody is okay with but not quite passionate about it. So I guess that's the big trick of us as designers and policymakers and others to kind of factor in our work.
Yeah, I love that. Let's celebrate disagreement. I think we don't all need to agree, but we can have different perspectives, but we can all come to what a shared consensus as well. Yeah, I'm gonna use that now. Let's celebrate disagreement. That's excellent. So, like, hypothetically now, or practically, from what you've learned over your time as being the director of this festival, are there any practical lessons or practical takeaways for designers and placemakers out there with regards to creating better places? Do you have anything you would like to share?
Yeah, I mean, a question that I often get asked, because lots of our particularly built public groundwork is quite small scale, and there is always question of like, how do you scale it up? Why is it like bigger and more ambitious? And then it kind of always makes me think, well, what does ambitious mean in terms of scale? And is it more powerful and kind of, are you achieving more by one big thing or by an accumulation of small things? And I'm really interested in this idea of starting very small and then kind of accumulating much more as it kind of rolls out, but then continuously kind of, I guess, thinking about the granular and systemic and how can one work on super hyper local scale, but also kind of with a kind of citywide lens in parallel, and vice versa. If you're kind of more working on a policy level, how do you kind of continuously test it and challenge it on a kind of granular scale? So to me, is how can we operate more successfully on multiple scales in one go?
Excellent. So I'd like to come back to now the storytelling part of the conversation, and to the point, and this is beautiful that the theme is voices, and I'm hoping that we'll hear a lot of stories. But in your view, what are the key factors to consider when telling the story of a place, and are there any stories that have stood out to you in the past?
I guess it again comes back to that idea of layering and collaboration and different perspectives and inclusion. And the project I can think of when the theme was ACT, we were working with Camden Council in Somerstown, which is a really interesting location, kind of surrounded by three big stations and lots of kind of regeneration happening there. We were focusing on Phoenix Road, which was a road that was back then kind of considering becoming pedestrian long term. And it was really about kind of using the festival as a vehicle to test and trial that future pedestrianization, but from a very human kind of perspective and lens. So we work, it was a design competition, and we work with Numa Studio in the end and Global Regeneration, who are an educational growing charity. And it was really about kind of creating, as designers, an infrastructure, kind of physical infrastructure on the road, but allowing all sorts of layering of activity over it. So we kind of went out and offer different kind of groups and individuals in their area to stage their own activity on the road closure itself. So we had kind of series of built installation, which hosted anything from kind of performances, music, spoken word, to kind of really kind of large meals on a really long table in the middle of the road, walks, tours that started from there. And it was about kind of going back to that point of creating a system that is kind of solid and clear enough, but it's also porous and open to allow all sorts of different activity that you anticipated, but even better that you didn't anticipate to emerge over it. And for me, that was a true way of kind of telling a story of a place that, yes, looks at the future, but it's also about a past and present in a way.
I love that. Yes. And I think, again, going back to something that we talked about earlier about how we create that loose framework or system, as you alluded to, but also it is permeable enough that people can come and contribute it to the local residents or visitors alike, and also make it their own, and the unexpected stories, as you said, that can come out of that. What would you like to see more of when it comes to storytelling of places and people?
That's a very good question. I guess lots of I'm in my mind. I'm directly thinking about public realm because obviously that's where I kind of see most of kind of interaction, and I think more of that kind of personal touch and stories and materiality, perhaps, so that spaces across London have that specificity of communities that surrounding the areas where these spaces are designed for. So in a way, less of kind of standard off-the-shelf kind of multiplied elements, and more kind of really thoughtful and bespoke abstracted kind of materials and places that really kind of resonate with people who surround it and then ultimately use it on daily basis.
That's something I would like to see as well. Less of the cookie cutter, as you mentioned, and more personal, individual, and human stories. I think that's a really nice thought. I'm already visualizing a little bit of it in my head. Now, Rosa, looking to the future, as someone who's part of the NLA, which is like the convener of the built environment, the voice of the built environment sector, what do you see as the biggest challenge for London's built environment in the next decade or so?
I think we have done lots of great work in terms of identifying gaps and problems and even opportunities, and setting ourselves targets. So thinking about kind of net carbon zero by 2030, lots of research in terms of kind of safety of women, young girls, and gender diverse people in the public realm, looking into kind of revitalizing our high streets. But how do we accelerate now the delivery, and how do we ensure as an industry that we are truly hitting the targets that we have set ourselves? And I wouldn't be being myself if I wouldn't say that, to me, it's really about, again, looking beyond the boundaries of our own kind of plots, red lines, and thinking about who else is around and how we can work together.
That's amazing. And I like the point that you touched about looking beyond the red line. Like a lot of developments maybe only focus on what's within their red line, but we should be collectively looking beyond the red line. And as I understand, the NLA also has a placemaking framework. Is that right? The six principles of placemaking?
Yes, that's absolutely our New London agenda. And it has, the 6 key pillars for kind of most successful city making that we embark on all of our projects, but we also encourage our whole industry to stand behind it and really deliver carefully each of those pillars throughout their work as well.
Amazing. And so if you had one call to the sector in terms of accelerating the change that you want to see, what would that be?
I think it's just accelerating the delivery. And I think going back to the point that we know what we have to do, it's just ensuring that we do it as quickly as we have to meet all of our targets.
I think that's a pretty succinct way of doing it. Like, we know what we have to do. We've been talking about it for years. Now we just have to get on and do it. Accelerate delivery. Absolutely, Rosa. So a little bit more now, coming back to the festival. Obviously, it's 20 years old, and you talked about your dream and your vision for the festival as the convener. What do you see the festival evolving to in the future? What do the next 20 years look like?
I mean, that's a really interesting question, and it's almost impossible to say because we don't really know how the world will look like in 20 years. But what I would definitely want to see is the festival kind of moving its tentacles through kind of different areas of London and moving where it's relevant. So I think for me, it's really about working in those areas, in those moments in time when we are needed there, rather than kind of ensuring consistency across everywhere. So, you know, one year it might have been Exhibition Road, but probably now it's less about Exhibition Road and it's going in another kind of pocket of Kensington and Chelsea, if we are talking about that area, or even it's going to a completely different area of London.
I just hope that it stays physical, like there's a physical element to it. Like, who knows, 20 years from now, we will have these VR headsets and experiencing the festival through that medium. Who knows? Obviously, like as you said, 20 years is a long time, and the world is changing incredibly well with AI, and you know, every other week there's a new development in AI, and that previous technology which was hot is not so hot anymore. But me personally, as a romantic and as a lover of places, I would really wish that there's a physical element, that there's still a physicality to it.
That's really interesting you say, because certainly pre-pandemic, we were very clear that all the festival activity has to be in person. And it was for the same reasons. It was about the festival should be a convener, as a vehicle to really bring people together. Obviously, we had to loosen that language a little bit with in pandemic, but also kind of the years following the pandemic. But I think now, even if we are not so vocal about it, by nature, everything is really kind of coming back to full in-person activity. There are questions, of course, always, particularly in terms of kind of more international conversations and conversation where the festival is a framework or a platform to discuss, but for discussions that kind of go beyond London, that some of those elements inevitably will have a digital component. But yes, absolutely. If I'm still here in 20 years, I would definitely expect to see it in person as well.
Right, so we'll remember this moment. This commitment, remember this conversation. It's 2025 now. So that means if my math is right, there'll be 2045, and we'll look back and to see and hope that that you know we're still actually using our feet to explore explore places. Well, that's been a wonderful conversation, Rosa. So tell me, what's next? What's next for you? What's coming up?
So now the things are really kind of steaming up ahead of June. So it's very much about kind of wrapping up the program and very quickly it will be again launching the festival in June.
Amazing. I'm really looking forward to it. I think it is definitely, like I said, even back when I was a fresh graduate to even now, it's a highlight on my calendar, and I mark the whole of June as LFA, and I try to be in London as much as possible to attend as many events as I can. So that concludes the formal part of our conversation. And now we move into our final fun segment, which is called Know Your Neighborhood. It's a fun little quiz. And your selected neighborhood is East Village in the Olympic Park in East London. So I will share 3 facts, and all you have to do is state whether they are true or false. But I will caveat that the responses are from sources from the internet. They have not been cross-verified for accuracy. However, what is on my note stands. So it's just fun. All right, are you ready?
Yes.
All right, okay. So fact number 1. The East Village has more green space than any other residential area in London.
Yes.
That's correct. Yeah, yes. East Village is known for its abundance of green space, with over 30% of the area dedicated to parks, gardens, and open spaces. I used to live near the Olympic Park for a number of years during the development of the park, and I watched it grow over time and evolve over time. And now I'm in a different part of London, but I keep going back and I'm thinking, wow, this is so beautiful now. It's, you know, all the plantation has come into its own, the ponds and the ducks and everything. And it's It's a place where you can escape, but you're still within the city.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, something I've been doing for the past 5 years in my free time is to run a lot. And I think kind of comparing it to any other area of London where I have ran previously, I can literally go for, 10 miles run without crossing a single car. So it's about kind of utilizing the parks and canals, which is pretty unique.
That is amazing. And I think definitely one of the lasting legacies of the 2012 Olympics. All right. So fact number 2, East Village is home to one of London's largest urban farms, growing produce that is used in local cafes and restaurants.
No.
Correct. That is false. Wow. 2 for 2. So while East Village does promote sustainability, it does not have one of the largest urban farms. However, I do not know which is the largest urban farm. I think that would have been helpful.
I know there are a few in the wider area.
Yeah.
Probably wouldn't tick the box of the
Yeah.
largest.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I think it kind of falls out of the
Yeah.
East Village footprint. So this was a lucky guess.
Yeah,
back
but
to
a
something
good
that-
guess, like a well calculated guess. All right, well done. Now, final
Okay, now
fact.
pressure is out.
Pressure's out.
Yeah.
Now you've got 2 for 3. Yeah. So the East Village is one of the first places in the UK where an entire district is connected to the national grid using renewable energy sources, including solar panels and heat pumps.
That's correct.
That is true. Wow, 3
Yeah.
for 3. Amazing. Great.
Wow, thank
Yeah.
you so much.
That's amazing. Yeah, so East Village is one of the UK's first energy efficient communities with renewable energy solutions integrated throughout the area.
My husband is challenging that, but for now, I
Yeah.
think that's a written fact.
That's a written fact. So as a resident, how do you feel about that?
Good, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
positive so far. Let's
Yeah.
see how the bills and everything keeps coming. But yeah, I mean, in general, with an area, absolutely incredible. And now with a little one of 18 months, kind of much more appreciative of wide sidewalks, lots of parks, canals, young families that live in the area. Yeah, really, super well connected. We couldn't be happier.
Amazing. Yeah, no, that's props. I think that was a really nice testimonial for East Village as well. They can use that in their marketing collateral. Well, that's amazing. So 3 for 3, well done. It's not easily done, Rosa. I have to say you're probably the second person who scored 3 for 3 on the Know Your Neighborhood quiz. So very, very well done. But that sadly means our time has come to an end. This has been so fun, and I wish you and the entire LFA and NLA team the very best for the 2025 festival. I for sure will be attending it 100%. Probably walking 20,000 steps a day. And yeah, thank you for joining us and talking about place.
Thank you so much. It was a huge pleasure.
And we'll see you soon.
Yeah, see you soon.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to join the conversation on social media with the hashtag #TalkingPlace. I would also love for you to leave our podcast a review and subscribe to all our podcasts and YouTube channel so you don't miss an episode. There's so much more to explore when it comes to creating good places, and I'm excited to do a deep dive into other topics with you in our next episode. I'm Tanisha Raffiuddin, and it's been my pleasure to be your podcast host. Thank you for listening. See you again next time, where we'll continue talking place. Talk soon.